Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to do a quick overview of the merchant configuration to give you the high-level overview on what are the capabilities when managing a merchant and what we analyze. A little touch on merchants. When we come into the dashboard, we can see here our processing history, distribution of transaction by hour. But if we go to the center, we can see here our traffic overview for a specific merchant. Approval ratio for last month as opposed to this one. And if we click the name of the merchant, we're going to see a quick profile and overview of what their activity was from the beginning of the month, which provider they used, how much money they processed, and so on. And that gives us the ability to go straight to the merchant itself, into that to dig deeper on the analysis for that specific merchant in the process. So this analysis takes us to this merchant to see their activity. We can see here again how much they process. We see their merchant ID and hashed, what enables them to do the integration. If we scroll to the bottom, we'll see here additional information and summary of their activity. We can see also their processing history for the last 6 months and their KYB status. If you go tab by tab, so the data tab gives us an overview of the information that was collected initially when the merchant was created. We can see here their registration form if they went through onboarding. We can see the description, the MCC code, their default currency, and under contact information, different information collected, the security settings and resetting their hash, URLs, so you can set up the different domains that the merchant is coming from. And in some processes, we do validate these domains against the active processing. Merchant brands are their referral links that they can generate in order to set later on affiliate referrals per each code that was created. If you continue to the process tab, this is where you're going to set up some of the configuration related to server or general processing by the account. If to enable a card processing, if to enable to send full card details, meaning you can use server to server for using tokens, but you cannot send full card details unless this checkbox is enabled. Allowing routing by percent will allow us to balance the traffic between multiple terminal configuration and split it 50-50, 30-30, and so on. Cashier mode, when working with merchants that are bringing their own MIDs, cashier mode will give them additional information about the processing, who's the provider, additional references included in the redirect, and so on. Under the auto-generate customer means that from every transaction the merchant will process in the system will create a customer profile on that part and start accumulating the information under that customer from every merchant or any transaction coming through regardless of the payment method and build the approval ratio process and additional profiles. We have here the CC storage. Are we allowing them to create tokens in the system and then later on use them? To use auth and capture flows in Israeli processing called J5, J4, give them the ability to process them later on. Are we enabling refunds for the merchant? So we have three configuration, blocking refunds altogether, allowing them to process directly, meaning the refund request comes from them, goes through the system to the acquirer, and then comes back, or allowing them to request a refund that stops in the system. Your management team will have to review them, and once you approve it, that will be transmitted to the acquirer and then waiting for the result on that part. Recurring settings, the system has a very extensive recurring engine, and the engine itself allows you to build those subscriptions. When will we charge the next charge at several attempts, one after another, to charge them, then moving on from there. Virtual terminal, are we allowing them to use virtual terminal from the merchant control panel or not? Account ownership, who owns the MID. So if the merchant owns the MID, meaning the acquirer pays the merchant directly, in that case, you're not involved in the settlement process. But if you are the one involved in the settlement process, so the terminal will be owned by you, your brand, and then by that brand, automatically the system will calculate settlement cycles, fees, buy rates, sell rates, splits to affiliate, and so on. Configuring different notifications. So when are we notifying the merchant about a successful transaction, when about a decline pending, and so on, and system alerts for chargebacks and other, let's say, timely notification that you might want to send on, and so on. Platform integrations, you can filter the traffic from which platform the merchant is coming from to give you a better indication for reports. Invoice services, so if you're using a third party to issue an invoice or the merchant is, you can configure his set of credentials here, and then at the end of the transaction, we'll notify that third party that the transaction has been processed. And mobile settings, so we have a mobile API. So if you decide to build an app on top of our API, you can set certain permissions here and limit the usage of that API on that part. When it comes to the risk rules, you can have a look at our risk rules video, but this allows you to either set risk rules from a template or add rules one by one. Setting from a template allows you to automatically select from one of the existing templates in the system and apply in a batch. So in this case, we have a template here. And then once clicking add, all these rules will be applied. How many transactions per card, how many declines per day, per week, per month, and so on, and even a limitation on how many transactions a merchant does on a certain period of time. And the risk, if to enable 3D, not to enable 3D, are using a third party MPI provider, and so on, or validating the billing address, email limitation, how many emails per cards, cards per email, and so on, and what to do with it, decline, notify us, and so on. Setting on the merchant level the allowed countries and allowed states, and what are the blacklisted countries and states if you want to block traffic from these countries. Sorry. A minimum transaction amount, maximum transaction amount, daily limit by time zones, and monthly limit. You can set that on the mid level as well, but if you set it on the merchant, regardless of what's configured on the mid, it will validate this and then validate what the mid is on HitSend. Working with third-party KYB, KYC providers, so in this case, the KYB monitor and the merchant, you have a flag if it's passed or not. And if you have the different providers like SumSub, Shufti Pro, GetID, Trulio, and others that you can configure here. And if selecting the provider, you can trigger the check manually if you want on that part, taking the information itself and then initiating the process. If using MaxMind, you can set here the configuration and rules and your TOCA alerts, how you want to proceed with the TOCA as part of your processing schedule. The terminal tab shows you the transaction routing logic for different payment methods, currencies, and so on. Also here, you can set from a terminal template, assigning multiple transaction routing options in one shot into the account itself. When editing a certain configuration, you can also see this in the terminal configuration and transaction routing videos. But here you set the payment method, the source currency, and the target, and you can set limitation on the specific country, which MID is being used, and you can set multiple ones to configure a cascading and such. You can see in the card type routing if it's a credit, debit, prepaid, consumer, commercial, route by specific bin. You can also set by specific amount, higher than a certain amount, lower equals to. You can set here the user-based routing if it's a first-time deposit, second upwards, different whitelist levels or loyalty levels. And you can decide if to trigger some subchecks during the transaction process. And then the transaction will start merchant to the platform, initiate some sub, and then from there continuing on. That part, and of course, the last part will be setting up your fees. This is what the merchant will pay you as an operator. And that part, including MPI cost and currency conversion cost in case you're converting to the specific terminal. Moving on from terminals, this is our permission tab. This gives you the ability to control the menu items appearing in the portal for the merchant. So you can see here the full list of all the different pages we have to offer. The base configuration comes from the program level, and then later on you can decide which page is visible for this specific merchant. Also, you can set on the login details in case you have a limited user accessing the portal. You can give them different permissions. Under the payout tab, you configure all the payout configuration, meaning the different currencies being used, the current unsettled balance, the percentages, holding margins, when are you actually going to pay for the transaction. So in that case, if we do T holding margin 1, meaning T plus 1, and you can play around with the different configuration. But also on the rolling reserve, set first of all how much money you already accumulated, but then what is the reserve, what's the period of month, and then hold dynamically enable a reserve and enable a release on that part. The application tab is where we manage the onboarding process, shows us what was collected or not during the application itself, the different statuses that you might want to change. When you keep track of the changes of the application, you can have a look at what's the current status and how it's progressing during the application. And notes and task and file management, you can associate a task to the specific user and then assign them and ask them for additional information, like you can see in our tasks video, also on the channel. Emails allows you to configure a pop email into the system itself and then file those emails under each one of the profiles on that part, according to emails on this account. Login details allows you to set limited logins to each account. And then later on, set the permissions. So call it limited at demo.com. Setting their password. And now you'll have an additional user configured for this account. You can allow them to send payment requests or only drafts. You can set their certain specific permission to the portal itself, meaning which pages will be visible to them when they log into the portal. And down here, you can set different action on the main login account, changing their password, resetting it, sending them an email intro, and so on. Stored PM allows you to see here the stored card under the merchant to bill them later on. You have the ability to set beneficiaries, meaning which third party they're going to pay out to. Settlement account and where you're going to pay them. So when creating the settlement, it will draw the bank account details from this tab and then pay from there going forward. They have an IBAN, then this will be the different IBANs you'll be monitoring and setting up payouts from, and so on. Fee configuration, you can set different periodic fee, meaning we're going to charge this account from one of the available fees that you as an operator have configured. So we can set a PCI fee to pay with either store payment method or with, let's say, from processing. Then when clicking save, that will be applied, and on a monthly basis, we'll add the fee to the account and will be deducted from settlement. The hosted tab allows you to set a different hosted page related configuration. So which payment method are enabled, if to check the uncheck the agree to terms and condition, if validating the order ID, allowing a wallet login using our wallet or Google Pay, if billing address fields need to appear on the page, which one of our templates will be used, which different payment method or groups will be visible in the UI, your terms and condition that will be visible on the page, and so on. Fraud monitoring, you can set different fraud rules to analyze the data being processed. Some rules are online, meaning being processed during the transaction. Some are offline, meaning an interval runs behind the scene, a scheduler, and scans every hour, every week, every month, every quarter, and then analyzes and gives you either an alert, a block recommendation, declining the transaction, blocking the email IP, and so on into the mix. You have multiple rules here on the merchant level, but also rules on the system level. You can have a look on our fraud monitoring video. Some, for example, using SIFT, Count, and other payment providers. Notification templates gives you the different setting if the merchant is subscribed to getting notified by email. And the risk rules allows you to, the onboarding rules, to analyze the data of the merchant. We can run a check dynamically as we saw in the onboarding rules video. And here we see we've analyzed the details, got a score, and all the information and rules that have been analyzed. Circling back to the balance video, this shows us the merchant's wallet, if they had any funds associated with their accounts, different balance requests, fees that are being configured for the different interaction, and topping up their account, payout, withdrawing funds, and so on. When working with different IBAN providers, so you can select here which one of the program holds the provider itself, and then later on associate and creating an IBAN for this user during the registration process that happens behind the scenes with the full IBAN flow itself. It was long, but thank you for sticking in and listening to the merchant overview. There are separate videos for different one of the interactions that we have on the platform. This is kind of a very high level overview and quickly on all the different things. Thank you for watching. Check out our channel for other videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.